with Thanksgiving coming up, it's always people's favorite thing to do is to debate their favorite Thanksgiving dish. So that's what we're going to do. Make a case.
I bring the party to my parents.
Like your personality?
Yeah, because they're 75.
Do they make everything like
so the
all
bar's
the whole...
pretty low?
The bar's on the ground for excitement in that household.
Once you walk in, they're like, our baby.
Honestly, yes. My parents love me. I don't know how your parents feel about you, but my parents adore me.
My parents have 4 kids, so I'm kind of like...
You get 25% of their love if they have to split it up between 4.
Yeah, we always fight over, like, do you ever do this? Well, you don't, because, you do have siblings. Yeah. So, like, did you ever, like, say, like, oh, no, I'm the favorite of, like, this parent?
It's always been established that I'm the favorite.
You're the baby, though, so that's kind of
like
a
given.
Baby.
I am the baby by a lot.
We always, like, my mom gets pissed, though, because she's like, I'm like, oh, I'm never my mom's favorite. I always say that to her, and she's like, shh, stop. None of you are my favorite.
Dude, parents are such liars.
Like
There's definitely a favorite.
For sure.
There is definitely a favorite.
Yeah, whichever one's like most like you, but they probably drive you the most nuts too.
That's the issue. I feel like the favorites do sometimes change though. Yeah, like my mom changes between like my brother and my sister. Never me.
I think it depends.
Every kid thinks the other sibling's the parent's favorite.
100%.
No, I'm definitely like my dad switches between me and my brother too, but not my mom's. My mom's never. I'm never my mom's favorite. Anyways, back to Thanksgiving.
Anywho,
they're big shoes to fill. I don't recommend it.
Who wants to recommend a therapist that we can all talk to about our upbringing, unlearned behaviors? I always bring a charcuterie board because I'm not a great cook. I'm decent, but I bring a charcuterie board, and I've always got mortadella. I've always got a salami. I'm not a big salami guy. I would rather replace salami with mortadella or prosciutto. And I bring...
Did you mean prosciutto?
No, prosciutto. Prosciutto.
Okay.
That's how the Italians say it.
Okay.
I've watched The Sopranos 4 times. I'm basically half Italian at this point.
You're probably more accurate than me. I always thought it was prosciutto.
Mortadella, prosciutto, salami, and then I like to bring a fennel sausage as well. Ooh. And then the cheese, there's always American cheese because I think American cheese is delicious. There's always a Merlot cheese from Sartori because I think it's delicious. And then I bring a loaf of French bread from Whole Foods or wherever, and I slice them up into little,
That sounds great.
And
so what time do you guys eat dinner?
Honestly, it depends on how many people are there. So if my sisters are both there, there's 2 people. And then the kids, 7 of the 8 live in the state. So if there are 7 children, my sister Ellen's family, I believe, is all gluten-free. And I think they're all dairy-free, too. So they might opt to eat somewhere else as opposed to coming to my parents' house.
They're dairy-free, and you're just bringing, like, all this cheese.
So what's up? You guys want to eat this cheese or not? So it depends on how many people are there.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, you eat does the charcuterie board come out, like, around noon or 2?
The charcuterie board comes out. I also make a jalapeno berry reduction that goes on the toasted French bread. But it comes out as soon as football starts.
Perfect.
Because then people can pick at it. And it's usually just me with a handful of prosciutto.
Yeah.
Prosciutto.
Can you bring this like to the office next week?
Yeah.
Do you want to give me $100?
Sampler? Oh, not really.
There you go.
But
that's how much it costs.
And I think
to put together a good charcuterie
I think
board.
perhaps the like the appies, like the cheese meat, is like always gonna always be relegated to like the childless brother, because that's what my brother's always responsible for, is bringing the cheese and like the
stuff that doesn't require any sort of
stuff
forethought.
that like a single dude in his 30s or 40s would
You're
be
not gonna
able
trust
to
him to
bring
make
to the party.
The mashed potatoes or something.
And then somehow I get stuck bringing the green beans every freaking
I love
year.
green beans.
One year I forgot to get the ingredients, and luckily Walgreens was open. So if you get I think like most Thanksgiving dishes you can literally make with ingredients from Walgreens, which is one of the reasons I literally hate Thanksgiving. I mean, like, give me a good turkey, I'll take that. But like, almost everything at a Thanksgiving meal can be bought at Walgreens.
So you gotta go to a good family's Thanksgiving. Like my family, my uncle cooks. It's like the best food ever. Like, I go to my other side of the family, not so great.
Microwave.
It's Walgreens type food.
Right.
he makes like instead of he also makes green bean casserole, but he makes like this asparagus casserole, and it is so good, and like everything is like really well made.
See, I'd like that. Like, I feel like I've gotten like pigeonholed into these like traditions of Thanksgiving or like where we all get stuck and it's like, well, we can only have yams with marshmallows on them or it's not Thanksgiving. And you get stuck. Like, nobody likes this food. The plate is all white. None of it has any flavor.
There's not enough salt on anything.
Everything.
There's a fight every year over whether the canned cranberries are real or not. And somebody has spent minutes boiling real cranberries too. Like, and then there's way more. How come there's always a dish this big of cranberries? People use a dollop, like the smallest spoon worth of cranberries, and there's a bowl this big on the table every year. What is that?
When I was a kid, I would eat the cranberry that comes out of the can. Oh, I would eat.
Well, that usually is gone. Oh, but the bowl, like somebody is always like, I'll bring cranberries, and they like boil it. Like they like boil it for like minutes probably.
We're gonna do a report after Thanksgiving, and we're gonna bring pictures of our families.
I'd like to see what people have on their table because I think like these confines of the traditional dinner are like not my favorite.
One side of my family does like not Thanksgiving meals. We just do like
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's what
I appreciate that.
Too.
Like, turkey, good food.
Yeah.
Can we stop lying to ourselves and saying like, oh yeah,
turkey's good?
Turkey's
no.
not
Nobody's
good.
liking
it's
turkey.
Dry.
There's nothing
dry,
about the
for sure.
Yeah.
Especially if you cook it poorly. Like no one wants to eat dry, chewy. Have you ever seen
grilled?
Christmas Vacation?
Yeah.
They dunk their turkey in their water.
That's what I have to do
that
sometimes.
sounds like pretty much every year on
People
Thanksgiving.
make turkey and it's
people
not juicy.
People are like excited about this.
Make a ham. Just make a ham. We should also probably start the show.
Hey, there's no way around. On top of the mountain, I'm queen of the mountain. My cup running over. I already told ya, I'm moving fast. You live in the past.
I want to learn how to play that.
This is rapidly becoming my favorite podcast intro that we do.
That's
I really enjoy it.
Wait, like the intro, like our cold open, or
no,
like
the music.
Isn't it good?
Our cold open went off the.
I'm still feeling a little emotional.
We've been going for 12 minutes on
like
cranberry sauce.
It was seven.
And
it's important.
You know what? We
gotta
keep things light. So we got a few things we're talking about that are probably a little more
like the
heavy
pronunciation of prosciutto.
Prosciutto.
Prosciutto,
And, I'm all for like
mozzarella.
having, pronunciations for things that are, like sauna. It doesn't sound right, but you got to say it.
It's sauna.
It isn't.
It's
just like prosciutto. It's not really prosciutto.
Did you know that sherbet is actually pronounced sherbet? Yeah, everyone says it wrong.
No, that's a lie.
Look it up. There's no
That's
second
a
R.
lie.
Once I learned that, my life changed.
I actually put that as one of my intros on my Hinge profile. That's how I hooked Jake. It was just like
that was your intro.
He was like, "No way."
No, it was like a random fact. You can answer those prompts.
I never had Hinge.
Oh, well,
Tinder.
I answered prompts and mine was sherbet.
Dude,
I always say it like that.
One of these pods, 1 hour cold open should be, what did your dating profile say?
Wait, I gotta get a Hinge.
What?
What did your dating profile say?
I honestly, I think farmers only would be
Christian
best
mingle.
for you. Yeah. Christian
Well,
mingle?
hey, for our listeners, if anybody has any like recos
For
on
dating,
where I should make a dating profile,
Definitely Hinge.
coffee
This
meets
is coming
bagel.
from someone who actually used dating things. You should use Hinge.
So
you can't find anybody at the rink these days.
You matched with Jake on Hinge,
and
right?
we've been dating for 3 years.
I matched with Laura on Tinder. We knew each other before, but we matched on Tinder, and now we're married.
Yeah, and Jake and I are doing great.
I always opted for meeting people in the wild, and look at me.
Write that down. Jot that down.
Jot that down.
Which one are we talking?
Jot that down.
Hinge. That's going to be the next week's episode is just going through Jossie's Hinge.
Nice. Our listeners can help us build Jossie's Hinge profile. Jesus. Okay, let's roll here. Jocelyn, you're driving the bus. We are on the bus. Is it a city bus or a school bus? It doesn't matter. You're in the driver's seat. Take us to our destination.
It's the freaking ice cream delivery truck. Okay. All right. So today kicks off mini camps for the P-Dub.
Let's go.
There's 2 different mini camps, one in Montreal, one in Toronto, and 3 teams per location. So 2 p.m. Eastern today, puck drops. for those first 2 teams. But they've been in training camp all week. They've all had media days this week. Everybody's hyped. Their full uniforms have been, showcased in every way possible, and they are ready to drop the puck. So I'm super excited for all these ladies and for these teams to start, filling their final roster, getting their contracts under them. I think there was only one contract signed this week, and it was a Boston player. But also tryout weeks are pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm glad the season's getting underway, so we have something to talk about besides preseason pomp and circumstance. You know what I mean? I want to watch a game. I want to watch somebody just get bodied against the boards and then talk about it. I don't want to say I'm over it because that sounds mean, but I'm over the jersey talk. I'm over the schedule talk. Let's play hockey.
Yeah, I was at the media day last week at TRIA, and that was the consensus of the women as well. It was awesome. It was super fun to be a part of. I'm not a journalist and don't have a background in any of this, but I'm getting my feet wet because of this podcast. And so that was really fun for me to show up there with a press pass. And I just watched from the outskirts. I wanted to see how it all happened, and so that I could be better prepared next time.
Let's play a game here. Who was the coolest person you met at media day? Who was the most famous?
Well, put it this way, I didn't really meet them. They were shuffled out and brought into the step and repeat, and there were, a bunch of cameras in their faces.
Okay.
And then questions were just hurled at them, and then they were just basically paraded back. So they were gate kept pretty well. But I would say Ken Klee got a lot of good questions. Coyne Schofield got several questions. There was a moment where she was addressing some of the end of season hype last year, and she wanted to put that to bed right away. So I thought that was nice that we haven't heard from very many Frost players on kind of what was going down. And so again, she was like, "We're focused. We're done with that." And they were happy to showcase their their warm ups. They're all wearing their full team issued sweats and whatnot. But again, that was in the rearview mirror. They're on the ice now, and they are ready to get more serious. So,
do you think that if you asked nicely enough, you and I could get matching Minnesota Frost jumpsuits?
Wait, I know somebody in there. I'm
itching for a pair of
I have
wind
an old
pants
contact here. That I think she's actually in charge of distributing the sweatshirts and stuff.
I want to wear what the players wear.
This girl, actually, I had texted her while I was at media day and had her come out and say hi. So.
I know I can't play like them, but I would like to at least attempt to look like them.
Well, it's they're all purple. I feel like you could probably go to Starter and pick up the get up, and then we could even just put on the crooked hat.
Could we wear them for every episode too?
I'd do it. I don't care.
Yes.
All right. Other PW news. A few rule changes were dropped yesterday.
Hit me.
So there are 3 major rule changes. The first one is this no escape rule. So on a penalty call, the team that receives the penalty call that will be shorthanded cannot make a change until after the next puck drop.
Yeah.
So the escape rule. So interesting. Haven't even heard of something like it. What are your initial thoughts about this? Why is this something that's been a problem?
No, I don't think it's something that's been a problem. I don't know how it's going to look. Obviously, I've never seen a game played that way before. But what I will say is the PWHL seems committed to manufacturing offense, which is what every professional league is trying to do, right? You're trying to manufacture more goals, more highlights, more everything without changing the DNA of the game. And I think this is a way to do that. It's a little bit like icing, right?
Yeah.
Where
I'm
you
just
can't
picturing
change.
all these so that the team that's going to have the shorthand, all 3 of their 4 are changing. The goalie on the other side's skating off. There's this mass chaos in front of the benches while everybody's trying to get off the ice before the possession changes to the and the whistle
the team
blows.
going on the power play will be able to change players, right?
Well, they will, but they won't have any reason to do it because the other team will be busy trying to change their players so that they'll have
So the puck gets dropped and the team killing the penalty is going to dump it out.
No, this is on a delayed penalty.
On a delayed
So a delayed penalty, right? This is when if you're a coach and you care and you want your top killers out, but they're not, maybe you got your 4th line out or 3rd line out, it takes a penalty.
Okay.
They've got to be out on the ice for the puck drop.
I know.
So I'm saying is that time period before the whistle on the delayed penalty.
Oh, they're going to be trying.
It's going to be
so
chaos. Yeah,
hard
all these girls getting off the ice and the goalie coming off the ice.
But that's more offense though, because if that team
now you got
tries
the
to
ice
get
open,
off,
right.
you've got 5
and
on
that's
whatever.
So that's why I'm wondering: is this all a drive so that there's So
More
that there
offense.
is this like opportunity for on a delayed penalty to have more time and space.
For sure. I also think that it creates a market for players. You could have 2 left feet and not be able to handle the puck at all, but if you can win faceoffs, you're going to become so valuable to a team that takes penalties, because what
They're
every
gonna
team is
wanna
going to
win
try to
those.
do is win the draw, dump it out, and immediately go for a change. If you can do nothing but win faceoffs, you're about to become, I was going to say rich, and then I realized that women don't get paid as much as they should. Shout out. You're going to have a spot on a team if you can win faceoffs, even
Well,
if that's
yeah.
your only job.
I like that point too, because I think we mentioned it to Boom about spreading the love. Like when players like Murphy are in the box, you know, historically I've played on teams where it's like you might only get 4, 5, 6 people who are really your PK.
Right.
But how about spread the love? Because you don't know what you're going to get stuck with in a situation.
Yeah.
Who knows how long
Your
these
best
girls
face
might
off,
have to be on the
your
ice.
best face-off person might be a defender.
Right. Yeah.
Still, you want her taking the draw, though, right? If you're in your own zone trying to kill a penalty.
Anyway, so this rule came out yesterday. Had never even considered it, and now I'm talking about it. So,
Nice.
And then the other rule changes have to do with making kind of a more punitive effort on players that make illegal hits to the head. So this is the first league of many hockey leagues to kind of go this far, and I think it's a major. There's some nuances on the actual rule, but basically the gist is the women's league is trying to make a statement about how much they want to protect these athletes' well-being.
A major and a game misconduct will be the default penalty of an illegal check to the head unless officials determine upon review the hit was accidental or the head wasn't the principal point of contact. That is according to the Montreal Gazette.
Okay, so
That sounds pretty standard.
it's pretty standard, and I suppose, like I said, there's just one of the more punitive results in these hits to the head. It seems like there's maybe more discretion for the official there too.
Yeah, because if you review a play and it's determined that the principal point of contact was the chest or the shoulder on those bang plays, then you wouldn't want a player getting ejected for a clean, I would say hit, but technically body checking I think is still illegal. So.
Right, body contact's allowed. Anyway, that's the majority of my PWHL.
I got another note for you
Yeah,
if you're
let's
interested.
bring it on. Bring
the
it on.
PWHL will feature 9 games played at neutral sites this season. Those neutral sites include Buffalo, Denver, Detroit, Raleigh, St. Louis, Seattle, Quebec City, and Vancouver. The trip to Detroit will be the second time that the PWHL has played a game at Little Caesars Arena. If I had to poll the audience here, Producer Kaler, you're a part of this too, because I know we've sent you on some goose chases for the PWHL. If you could pick one game that YHH would foot the bill to send you to, which game would it be out of the 9 locations?
Did you read them again?
I
Or
did.
could you read them again? I
Buffalo.
was not paying attention.
If you pick Buffalo, you're
Okay.
insane. Denver, Detroit, Raleigh, St. Louis, Seattle, Quebec City, and Vancouver.
I have to go with like Seattle or Denver.
Seattle or Denver. Okay, why not any of the other ones?
Just because I like the cities.
You don't want to go to Buffalo and eat at a Bob Evans?
I love Seattle. I am a Seattle lover. I also have friends in Denver, so send me there. Then you don't have to pay for my hotel. I can stay with them.
Tony
You
loves
say
to
you
save
say
a
it to me
dollar.
like I'm in charge of our corporate card. Jossie, what about you? Where would you love to cover a game?
Okay, so I would like to see something like the Raleigh location. So here's a market that's done well in the men's game, and is a growing
It is. It's
girls
growing.
market. So, I think when we talked about locale for expansion teams a couple episodes ago, I had said my ideal would be somewhere south, maybe south of the Citrus line, but Raleigh would be the closest. So that's where I would choose.
Okay, I think that those are 2 different conversations. Looking for a place to put a franchise would require, I think, more hockey infrastructure. But for these neutral site games, you're literally just trying to drum up a little bit of interest.
Well, and Quebec City, interestingly, has already sold 17,000 tickets to their game.
They're going to play at the
They don't
Videotron
even have
Center.
an NHL team. So, so certainly there's, these markets have been waiting and anticipating these games, and they're looking forward to these tour games. Certainly.
I think Quebec City might be the perfect place. I know I mentioned Pittsburgh and Detroit the last time we had this conversation, but Quebec City already feels overlooked when the Nordiques were ripped out of their heart and brought to freaking Denver. Insult to injury, the Avs won a Stanley Cup within like 6 years of being taken away from Quebec. But Quebec has always wanted a team, an NHL team. They haven't gotten one yet. We'll see the next round of expansion. We'll see if a team ends up in Quebec City. But it also feels like women's hockey has always gotten the short end of the stick. So what a happy marriage. A pissed off city that speaks French gets a women's league. That could be fun.
I know. I said we all just have to wait and see. And I think I've even heard some people like, if this expansion happens, or if they get 2 teams, or if it's just one team. But notably, Detroit, they on both seasons, last year and this year, they're going to do that Detroit stop on that tour. So perhaps there's something to look at there. But
your Minnesota Frost will play in 3 of these games. They will play Montreal January 12th at Ball Arena in Denver. The Frost will also play Ottawa on March 7th at the Lenovo Center in Raleigh. And then Sunday, March 16th, Minnesota will take on New York at Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. That is a gorgeous facility, by the way.
Before we cap our P-Dub talk, I can't not mention the league welcoming Megan Duggan as a special consultant to hockey operations. So what a huge pickup for the league. Again, I think like she's over at where is she? The Bruins. Who is she with right now? But she's got experience. She knows what she's doing. This was a big move by the league to bring somebody with some hockey operations experience to the C-suite and get some things going.
She's currently the director of player development for the New Jersey Devils. I'll be curious to see how she balances these roles. I always get a little suspicious, and this is nothing against Megan, but I get suspicious when I see the word consultant. Like, what do you mean you're a consultant? How often are you in the building as a consultant? What are you consulting on?
Yeah, that is a good question. Well, I'll tell you what, there's just from just speculating, there's plenty to consult Megan Duggan on.
Oh, yeah.
We'll take her.
There's plenty to consult her on, which is why I wish that maybe she took on a more defined role with the PWHL as opposed to simply being a name on the masthead.
Yeah,
you know
right,
what I mean?
right.
I think she's super smart, and obviously she's worked her way up through the NHL with the New Jersey Devils, and I would love to see her in a more permanent role.
Yeah.
PWHL.
D1, or so let's say NCAA, D1, D3 hockey this week. A couple big rivalries last week. Results of those, the Gophs walked away with a sweep.
Whoop!
Yeah, that was exciting after having
Never a doubt.
Boom in here last week, and they sounded hyped. He must have been on the team bus or like close by when he was texting me like, "Where's this video?" And that was Friday, like within 3 hours of their game starting. So that was kind of fun. But and then Wisconsin took the first game in the Ohio series. This is 1 versus 2, and then lost the second game. So their first loss of the season. And
who called it?
Yeah, well, I was thinking.
Who did?
She said they're gonna get at least 1 point this week.
Oh.
I didn't
In our
realize it was
last
3.
pod.
Yeah, like, and then I was like, oh, I guess I don't even know how they issue points because
She said they're gonna break their streak.
yeah.
She
You
did.
made some good calls too.
I did. I don't remember.
But yeah, I was
don't remember
expecting
any of
that-
this. I'm being gaslit.
I was
right now.
expecting that this would be the weekend that their winning streak would probably come to an end, and it did. So there weren't many changes at the top 3, 4, 5 spots on either D1 or D3 poll.
Wisconsin got all 20 first place votes despite losing. What does that say about Wisconsin's
Maybe they voted on Saturday night
overall reputation?
or Friday night, I should say.
Their overall reputation.
Yeah, they
throughout
are going to
the
be really,
country.
really, really hard to.
I wonder how
knock
many
off.
games they would have to lose to be knocked out.
Well, they would have had to been
2.
swept by Ohio.
Okay.
They would have had to have been swept. So
All right.
anyway, yeah, it's still looking good for Wisconsin, and every team can afford to take some knocks and learn from them. You don't want to go too long as a dynasty early in the season. That's not peaking at the right time.
Division 3 still very early in the season. UW River Falls and Gustavus still the top 2 teams, although Middlebury has gotten 1 first place vote. Middlebury currently 2-0-0 on the season. Augsburg coming in at number 13 this week. You and I had the pleasure of catching up with Augsburg head coach Elizabeth Biz Bauer. Boy, howdy, was she a fun one to talk to.
Yeah, and so D3, I just wanted to note, obviously Gustavus and River Falls are 1 and 2. and Gustavus played St. Olaf. So St. Olaf last week was others receiving votes where they were somewhere up at the bottom of the top 20 poll wise, and they're not on the list anymore. Although it looks to me from some box scores that they gave Gustavus a little bit of a run this weekend. So that's exciting to see out of St. Olaf, and we'll keep an eye on them because if you're giving Gustavus a hard time, you're probably someone to watch.
Absolutely. Right now sounds like a great time to throw it to our interview with Biz Bauer, still in this Division III vein. We hope you enjoy.
We are here with Biz Bauer, the head coach of the Augsburg University hockey program for women. Biz, thank you so much for being here with us. We are excited to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, this is your first year as head coach at Augsburg, second year as a coach at Augsburg.
Correct.
Tell us a little bit about how you got there.
Yeah, I mean, I was an assistant last year with Michelle McAteer, and I think she did a great job kind of prepping me for, what it's going to look like for the future and if this is kind of an opportunity I want. She was always really encouraging, to be like, if you ever want to apply for a job, like if you're ever interested in a head coach position, like feel free to just go and do it. Like you don't have to ask my permission. Like I want you to move up into the world, like, where you want to be. And it just ended up that she got an amazing opportunity to be the commissioner of the WCHA. And
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Okay.
pretty crazy. Want to pass that up either, obviously. So, and she deserves that. She's an awesome person, an awesome coach. So, she was in my corner the whole time, kind of going through the process and stuff, interviewing for the head coach position as well. And I think to my luck, it kind of took a little bit longer than we thought. And so I think that kind of narrowed the pool down a little bit kind of when we got towards the end. So, I was just really lucky and grateful to have the opportunity. And obviously being an assistant last year, I think having the support of the team and like the athletic department kind of in my corner, already knowing me as a person, knowing me as a coach, I think helped a lot too. So.
Yeah, fantastic.
Did you know Michelle before becoming an assistant coach at Augsburg?
Nope.
Okay.
No, I knew of her, but yeah. Never.
So you charmed her in one season enough to recommend you for the head job. How are you able to do that?
I don't know.
Show up
actually.
early, stay late, work the grease board?
Something like that. I don't
Well,
know.
I mean, I'm looking at your hockey history, and do you ever get sick of winning?
I don't know about that.
I mean, I'm looking at a Wisconsin youth record and an Eau Claire record, heavily tilted in the win corner. So I'm sure there's a lot of reasons why Mac saw some good things in you. And for that program, Mac's an incredible mentor, and she's brought that program a really long way.
Yeah.
So how fun to be able to step in and fill those shoes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, she turned the program around when she started. She was there for 14 seasons, so she had a lot of time to do so, but she did it pretty quick and did it the best way she knew how. And I mean, yeah, very lucky to step into a program that was already in a really good place, culture-wise, right, winning, just all the things that you kind of want to step into. So, but I mean, going back to the winning thing, when I went to Eau Claire, they only won 9 games the season before I came in. So it wasn't like I was expecting to go into some success. We somehow pulled it off for 4 years that we just kind of built the program up a little bit. I think there was 14 or 15 of us as freshmen. That was like his first recruited class going in. So it was kind of crazy. Everything just kind of came together. So I think he was a big part of that. But yeah, it was.
So you've been on the other side of a bench with a new coach. You're the third coach in Augsburg's history.
Yeah.
Has it really only been 3?
It's only been 3. Jill Patilla, Mac, and now you. 2 of you have really good nicknames. We'll have to talk to Jill about that. See if we can't come up with something like retroactively. So what's top priority? I mean, you're coming in, like you said, Mac has done such a nice job with the program, and you guys are really on the cusp of, I mean, I think you went to either semis or a national or a final game like, 3-4 years ago or something. But what's like top priority for you right now with this team?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, a big part of it is the culture of the team. And I know when I took over, a lot of girls were, like, we really want to keep our culture the same way. We really want to have that, strong unity that we've had. And because last year we really just didn't have a lot of issues, which I think is like pretty uncommon. I think during all of my playing years, there was pretty much always an issue at some point during the year, right? That's just how it is. Like 25 different girls in a locker room with different opinions, and that's just how it goes. So I think that was something that was kind of at the front of what we were focused on when I took over to make sure that we didn't allow anything to slip in those areas. And like you said, like Mac did such a good job with the culture and just with the program in general that it's not like we needed to come in and change 100 things, right? Because everything was already in a good place. So it was just about maintaining a lot of that. And I think obviously I put my own spin on things and changed some things as we've gone through here. But for the most part, a lot of things have kind of remained, you know, whatever's really important to the team. So I think right away we sat down with the captains and I was like, you know, what's most important to you guys this season and what do you really want to not change, right? Like what's a must that like we can't change that's just been a tradition for your past 3 years and that you really want to keep, and kind of talk through some of those things about like what's, you know, what to me is like, that doesn't really matter if you guys want to do that because it doesn't really affect anything that we're going to do. So go ahead, like, you know,
Sure.
continue with that. Or, you know, maybe I think we should do this a little bit different. So I think just getting kind of a pulse on where they were at when we started was really important. So
You're a 2020 grad of UW Eau Claire. How old are you? Do you mind me asking?
no, I'm 26.
You're 26. So which being 26 as the head coach of a Division 3 program, that makes you one of the youngest coaches in the country. Was that an advantage going into this situation? Because it feels like as a younger coach, you were more willing to listen to the players as opposed to somebody who'd been doing it for 20 years and showed up saying, this is my plan, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I've always done.
Yeah, I think there's definitely advantages. I think being an assistant too, kind of having that like more maybe personal like relationship with them where they're not, I don't want to say afraid of you, but they're not as worried maybe about telling you some things because they know you're not the one making the decision about who's playing, who's in the lineup, right? Things like that. So I think your relationship as an assistant to a head coach just changes a little bit. So I think having that already last year was helpful for me, kind of going into it. But yeah, I think just being younger in general I feel like I'm more relatable maybe to some of the girls in certain ways. So I think that's kind of helped a little bit. But I also think there's more challenges, right, with being young too. I think there's, you know, people like maybe not understanding why you're doing the things that you're doing. I think that's for any coach. But I think especially when I'm as young as I am, I think sometimes they maybe question it like, oh, well, she's only been, you know, doing this for a year. Like, does she really know? And it's about creating that trust and that buy-in.
Aren't we so fortunate as coaches that all of these parents are better coaches than us? So then we don't have to be that good.
Yeah, exactly.
We have them to fall back on.
Can you think of a specific instance where somebody questioned something you were doing?
Not so far this year. I just think there's some things that we've changed a little bit. Like I could think of like our penalty kill forecheck that's changed.
Okay.
And I remember the first day I introduced it, like their eyes were just like, I don't know about that. Like, I don't know how well that's going to work. So, and you know, it goes back to like my experience and right, what I did as a player, what I've seen work or just what I've watched, you know, I watch a lot of video and things like that. So what I've seen, I'm like, okay, I know this can work if we can do it and execute it well. But for them, it's like, that looks kind of scary. I don't know how I feel about that. So it's partially that and just like getting them to buy into me and understanding that like, you have to trust my plan and my vision for how this is all going to shake out. So, but definitely a little bit harder, I think, being a first-year head coach. So
Sure.
I would imagine so, for sure. Hockey family, I want to go back a little bit into your family history. Your brother played at UM Crookston. You got a twin sister, Emily, who played, but there are 4 kids in your family, right?
yeah, there's 5 of us total.
There's
Yep.
5 total. So did everybody play hockey?
My middle 2 sisters were figure skaters.
Oh, boo. do they take a lot of guff at the dinner table for being figure skaters instead of hockey
No,
players?
I don't think so. They were like at every game when my dad was coaching and when we were growing up and stuff. So they were our biggest supporters. But yeah, they just picked the other route. When my twin sister and I were little, we kind of had like a choice of which direction you want to play. Do you want to play hockey like your brother, or do you want to be a figure skater like your sisters?
I bet they were the best skaters in the family too.
Yeah, probably.
Were you always destined to be a coach, considering that your dad is one of the longest standing coaches in Wisconsin girls high school history and boys? You coached
Yeah.
at Wausau East. But were you always going to be a coach? Did you always know that was something you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think really early on, I think when you play sports, you always are just like, I want to be involved in sports in some way in my adult life. So I studied kinesiology. I minored in coaching, kind of hoping to go more of like the sports performance route, weight room kind of style, I think was what I was originally thinking. I think maybe when I was younger, I just didn't know about quite as many opportunities as there are for coaching. So, and then, yeah, I mean, just following in my dad's footsteps, I watched him coach my whole life. I saw the good and the bad, right? But, you know, I was just thinking about it when I was in college, and I was like, I can't imagine, like, this is just my job every day. Like, I just get to go to the rink and, like, coach hockey. Like, that's all I have to do. Like, not that that's all I have to do. Obviously, there's other pieces to it, but it's like, how cool would that be for that to just be my job? And for him, obviously, he was a teacher, too, so I saw that side. But I did some substitute teaching a few years ago and last year a little bit, too. And I think that was like not the route for me.
Not for you? Shocking.
So I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to do that. And I mean, I kind of knew that when I was going through college that wasn't exactly the way I wanted to go, but I knew I wanted to coach. So
Yeah, that aspect of being able to like help people, mentor, teach,
absolutely.
and be on the ice.
Yeah.
They say you don't work a day in your life when you're doing something you love.
Oh, it's so true. Like I just can't. I struggled a lot when I left my last job because I really liked my last job to take the assistant job. But my dad was the one, and my whole family really pushed me into it because they knew that I was going to love it. And it's so true now. Like I never have a Sunday night where I'm like, oh, I have to go to work tomorrow. I'm like, oh, I get to go practice tomorrow.
Yeah. Can we get some more ice? The 2 hours we have is not going to be enough.
Yeah, exactly.
You ended up with 125 points in 80 high school games. Congrats, by the way. Nice
Thank
work.
you.
That's a lot more than well, I don't know about Jesse. It's a lot more than I had. Can you tell us a little bit, what is high school hockey like on the girls' side in Wisconsin? We talked a little bit about it offline, but we're spoiled here in Minnesota. I mean, it is a full-on, full court press here. But what is it like in Wisconsin?
It's definitely different. I would say, like, I see kids here skating when they're 3 or 4 years old, and they probably could skate better than I could when I was like 8 years old in Wisconsin. So I think you just start a lot later. There's not maybe as many opportunities for development. There's so many different programs here in Minnesota. Like there's everything for training programs, for AAA, for, private stuff. There's just like 1,000 different opportunities. And there's just not a lot of that in Wisconsin. There's not a lot of big names or big companies that are running kind of programs like that. And a lot of the youth hockey is run by parents. It's run by a lot of dads or whoever is kind of available to help out with practices. So maybe you don't get quite as much of that kind of specific hockey coaching at a younger age. That would be helpful to kind of benefit you. And I just think hockey's just not as well known or maybe as supported in Wisconsin as it is here. It just doesn't have that big name. So definitely a lot smaller. My high school team and all my youth teams were co-opted. We were 4 different schools in high school, so it was just hard to even get enough people to make a team from one school versus here where you cut, a certain amount of people every year in high school because there's just so many people trying out, which is a good problem to have. But yeah, definitely a very different experience in Wisconsin.
You said there's only 4 teams that make the state tournament?
Yeah.
Is it the same 4 every year?
It's like a rotation of like 4 to 6 teams usually that are good pretty consistently every year.
Who are the big guns in Wisconsin?
When
outside of the central Wisconsin storm.
Yeah. When I was in high school, it was usually us. It was Hayward. It was Green Bay. I'm trying to think of who else was good. USM.
How about Hudson?
Good.
How does Hudson do?
Hudson's been good more as of recent, I feel like, for boys and for girls. But yeah, when I was in high school, it was kind of like those 5 that I think were pretty solid usually. So we had our rivalries. One of my best friends now played at Hayward in high school. And we played against each other, and they won the state tournament. I think it was our freshman and sophomore year. Maybe they won back-to-back. I can't remember. But I just remember, like, it's crazy how you actually had 3 friends in high school who I played against in the state tournament. And you just hate them when you're playing against them because you're like, oh, this girl's so good. I hate this. And then they win, and then you just have that rivalry for, like, the next couple years. And then 2 of them ended up at Eau Claire. We all played together, and, like, now they're both 2 of my like best friends to this day, so it's crazy.
Who's that?
Cara Knapp, she played at Hayward, and Courtney Wittig, she played at Bay Area Ice Bears.
All right, shout out.
Yeah,
Karen
shout
and
out.
Courtney.
Courtney was the first ever Division III player to be drafted into the PWHL when they first started, or whatever it was called. It was
shit.
PHF.
PHF.
Yep.
There were several. I can never keep them all straight.
Yeah, it was the PHF because it was right after we graduated in 2020, 2021. So she was the first ever Division III player drafted. She was my line mate for 3 years. It was awesome. I just passed her the puck and she just scored all the time.
I was gonna say because Eau Claire's been running like basically a D1 program for several, almost decades now. But
crazy.
Yeah, they say D3 on the roster chart, but those girls are good. But I was thinking, like, we were talking before this, because in a state like Wisconsin, where you're saying, I mean, it almost is emulating Minnesota girls hockey, 30 years ago, as far as opportunities and as far as training and development being such a high priority, and when girls are getting started and things like that. But I was saying, I see more cream of the crop rise out of Wisconsin in women, like at the high level. And I wonder if that's just because these kids, they get the chance to really just play on the pond and like develop at their pace and their rate. I think in Minnesota with the numbers that it's easy to get kind of into a cattle herding situation. You get a lot of identical players at the same level coming in at 16 years old, you know, and it's like, where are the kids that are creative? Where are the kids that maybe looked lanky or like maybe didn't start till they were 9, so they never made the AAA team the first year, so now they haven't been on the team, but maybe they're getting squashed down, where like in a state like Wisconsin, those players really get to rise up and really get to make a run at like a D3 or D1 roster and showcase their talent. And I just think that's kind of a cool thing coming out of Wisconsin, but it reminds me again of Minnesota hockey, girls hockey 30 years ago.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's definitely players that develop later, and I think they have that, more opportunity maybe even, or if they played boys for a little bit when they were younger in Wisconsin and then move into the girls. I think that's very true. There's some big names that have come out of Wisconsin that have had really successful careers, and definitely just a very different dynamic going through there. But I just remember when I was young, like looking back at some videos of us and like my twin sister and I when we were playing like U10 or whatever, and it's like I don't even know what knee bend is at all.
Yeah.
And then it's like, how did I even get to where I am today? Like, how did I even do that? I was a terrible skater. So yeah, it's just crazy to see like you can peak at
a very
different
later
ages
Yeah.
compared to other
Do you
people.
hear that, everybody training in Minnesota, picking teams in Minnesota?
That's a great recruiting pitch. I
Yeah.
couldn't skate in high school, but you should trust me with your development. But I can only say that
That'll get
because you were the catalyst behind a 13-player incoming class. That's huge. Not only for a women's program, but for a Division III women's program.
Yeah.
And Division III programs scrap for players at so many places.
Yeah.
What makes you such an effective recruiter, other than your brutal honesty?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it goes back to like relating a lot of it to my playing experience, and I had a really good experience, so I just try to communicate that to the athletes that I recruit, and that I want to create that same experience for them, you know, and I know I can do that because I experienced it, and if you come play for me, right, I can give you that same experience, and probably even heightened a little bit more at where we're at. Like I think being a private school in the MIAC, like we're lucky that we have a lot of maybe more opportunities than some other schools. Like we have 2 rinks on campus, and nobody else has that in the MIAC. There's a lot of teams in the country that don't have that. There's a lot of teams that have to travel to their rinks, and it's just, I can't imagine trying to have to sell that versus sell what we have, right? And just the athletic training room we have, the trainers, right? The full-time coaches, and just there's so many things that I think make us like easy to sell to people. But a lot of recruiting is selling yourself too. So I think it's just about like relating really well to the athletes and having those like meaningful conversations and learning about them as people, not just hockey players, and what's really important to them in their experience. So
How much of your recruiting now is watching and evaluating Division I players who might be looking to transfer to the Division III level because it's become so easy to transfer? Or how is it more looking at high school players and recruiting them as high school players, or is it looking for D1 transfers?
yeah, we don't really recruit a lot of D1 transfers. We don't watch for that. I mean, we definitely have our eye on the transfer portal just to see kind of like who's in there and who we might be interested in. And I think there's names of people that you recognize from high school that have only been at their school for a year, and you're like, oh, I was kind of expecting that, right? Or maybe like, okay, that I see her name, I recognize her name, I know she's good, so she might be somebody we take a stab at. But for the most part, most of our recruiting is done with high school kids right now. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask if you've ever, when recruiting a high school player, have you ever had to show a little tough love and be like, you have no shot at playing D1, so you should probably come play for me? Because if you wait too long, and I see this with some players, if you wait too long for that D1 offer and it never comes, the MIAC teams have already filled their rosters.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to come get you. And unfortunately for women's players, you can't go to USHL, you can't go to the NAL, you can't go to the NA3. So when have you ever had to show a little tough love towards a recruit? Obviously, you would say it nicer than I just did, but have you ever had to do that?
Yeah, for sure. I think especially with the kids that you're really interested in, and it kind of comes down to that, that timeline where you're starting to make your decisions and you don't want to push them too hard to feel like they have to make a decision. But it's like at the same time, yeah, you can go to this Division I school and, not probably be 500 and maybe sit the bench for your first year or two. Like, and if that's the kind of experience that you want and that's okay with you because you want to play at the Division I level, then that's your decision, right? But at the end of the day, and then you just pump their tires, right? Because it's true. It's like you're good enough to be a Division III All-American. You're good enough to be All-Conference. You're good enough to be an impact player at this level. And if you want that and you want to play, not play you don't promise them that, but right, like if you want to be that type of player that can really make an impact at the Division III level, like you have that opportunity right now to do that. So I think it's just like a little bit of a balance of trying to like really be honest with them without you don't want to talk down about other schools, obviously, but it's the reality of it because there's a lot of players that just want to go D1 for the sake of going D1, and it's like it's not probably worth it at the end of the day with the schools that you might be looking at just because it's not going to be as good of an experience. But it's hard to convince kids out of that. I mean, there's lots of kids we see go D1, and the next year they're in the transfer portal. So
They go D1 for a quarter zip and for a pair of sweatpants.
yeah, and it's crazy. Like there's so many new programs popping up too that are Division I. So I think that's there's a lot of draw because they don't have a reputation yet. So you're like, oh, well, maybe my class will come in and like we'll be really good right away, and we'll be able to like actually compete at the Division I level versus like teams that have been established for a little bit at the D1 level that are not really quite playing at that actual caliber, So
And it's great that there are new Division I programs popping up, but you would hate to see a player go to a program, just like I said, for the sweatpants, as opposed to going to a D3 program where you can be an All-American. And we're going to, at a place like Augsburg, we're going to set you up with an alumni network that is going to get you a job at 3M or Cargill or another Minnesota-based company.
100%.
Playing the 40-year game as opposed to the 4-year game.
Yep.
So when I was in college, I went from D1 to D3. I went from Wisconsin to Augsburg. And Jill Patilla personally wrote a check for every girl on the team to get a new stick 1 year. It was of the 4
That's
years that some of
amazing.
those girls went to school. It was the only time she ever did that, but she took us on a group field trip to like the basement of Dave's or something in Rosa, and we all got to pick a stick. It was amazing. Back when like they're two pieces, like a wood blade, aluminum. What does that look like now? Because as you mentioned, the sweatpants and the sweatshirt. Like, are kids getting sticks at least at Augsburg? Like, what does it look like?
Yeah, we get. Yeah, everybody gets 2 sticks. I mean, I think that's on the women's side is pretty standard. They don't really break a lot of sticks during the year. I know the men's side, they get like 8 or 10, and they still break all of them, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, usually like 2 sticks. They get helmets, they get gloves, they get breezers. They get 50% off for like just the rest of their gear if they need anything. They get their undergear, their jocks, their shirts, their socks, all that stuff. Plus sweatshirts, warm-up outfits, kind of all that stuff. So definitely a lot luckier than what it was back then.
What it looked
I
like
think
for
it's
us. I still have some.
changed.
I think we paid for like our Bauer get up that like, I
Yeah.
still have in my closet. Like I might need this. I paid for this.
You paid for your warm-up outfit in
Yeah,
college?
it was like it was like a Bauer. We had it stitched. It was like so nice, and yeah, we all like
That's
had to throw
vintage.
down. I know.
That's such a
It's
bummer,
vintage.
though.
You would love this thing. I could get you one.
Could you imagine
I would
as
love one, actually.
Could you imagine as a coach walking into the locker room and looking at a new group of players and being like, hey, it's great that you're all here. By the way, you all need to pony up $175 for sweatpants and a jacket.
Yeah.
Write
No,
down
I mean,
your
literally
size
back
and I need a
then,
check.
D3 hockey was a sign-up situation.
Oh,
I mean, the school was happy to have another pupil.
Yeah.
Literally.
that's true. That's
That's
20
true.
more kids
Back
paying
then,
tuition.
yeah, back then, there were definitely good players at D3. I know girls that were All-Americans from Augsburg that could probably play in the P-Dub if they kept working
Yeah.
out, right? Like, there's definitely good players, but that's because Augsburg, as you mentioned, that I think like everybody we've talked about on this show in 5 episodes has a tie to Augsburg. Plus the guy from the Summer House
Really?
on TV on Bravo.
What?
Like, that's my most famous alum.
I don't think I knew about
Nobody's
that one.
watching Bravo because one of my favorite
Well, I'm watching
characters.
Southern Charm. I'm not
Well, how have you
watching
not
Summer
gotten to
House.
Summer House?
Because I'm still hooked in Southern Charm. What
Anyway,
those people
he's an
go
Augie
through.
alum as well.
Wow.
I know. So
That's
it's like
awesome.
some of it's selling itself.
You're, Jeez. We're running off the rails already. To bring us back down to earth, we're bringing up something a little uncomfortable. Your father penned a very long article in the Rink Live, and I didn't know your dad was a freelance writer. Congratulations, that had to be fun. About coaching in this day and age, and your dad was forced out of his previous head coaching position despite having won almost 400 games at the girls' high school level in Wisconsin. And I find it darkly funny that coaches get forced out in Minnesota, but we take hockey so seriously that you almost expect it. But in Wisconsin, you said there's only 4 teams that make the state tournament. The level of talent is not on par with Minnesota, and coaches are still being run out of programs.
Yeah.
Well, how did your family navigate that situation? Because that touches everybody, right? Because it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
community thing. How did that situation affect your family, and did it affect your decision to become a coach?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely affected our family. I think that's, for him, like, it's been his passion his whole life, and that's really all he wants to do. He's retired now, so he substitute teaches a little bit here and there. But that's not really, he taught so that he could coach. That's what he always wanted to do. And so yeah, I think, it was definitely hard on all of us, especially, mostly him, obviously, going through that. And yeah, it's unfortunate. Like, you do see it happen everywhere, and it's becoming more and more common. And a lot of it just goes back to a lot of different things, right? It goes to the parents, the ones that are unhappy with how their kids, maybe aren't getting the playing time that they think their kid deserves. And so, it just turns into a whole he said, she said, right? Like, well, my kid's not playing enough, so now we need a reason why this coach isn't doing his job, even though maybe your kid's just not good enough. And I think for a lot of parents, that's just hard to accept. And it's the reality at any level. But at the high school level, especially, like, parents have a lot more influence. Right now with my job, like, I don't deal with any parents. We make those expectations very clear at the beginning of the year that your daughter's an adult and she will handle any conversations revolving around playing time or anything like that with me, right? And it's not something that you need to be involved in. And I think that would be valuable to implement at every level, but unfortunately that's just not something you can do at the high school level when they're not adults yet, so they can't quite do all that themselves, or maybe they aren't expected to. But also just like not having the support from your athletic department or whoever it is to kind of back up coaches that have been there for a long time and understand that he's been coaching for this long and he hasn't had any issues, right? So, how do we navigate that and look at that and recognize that maybe it's not on the side that you actually think it is? And again, it just goes back to the whole he said, she said thing, and it's just hard to go through all of that and understand what's right and what's wrong. I think that's just the politics of sports in general, is that you don't probably ever really get the truth because you just never know who's telling the truth, and that's the reality of it. So I don't think it affected my choice to be a coach, just because I've seen all of the good that has come out of it and, what's most important in all of that. And again, going back to at the college level, like, we don't really deal with parents, so I maybe don't have that worry the same way, but I could still have that worry in the sense that any of my players could say anything any given day that I did or did not say, right? And it could still be the same argument. I mean, it happened to the old Augsburg soccer coach. I don't know if you knew a lot about that, but it was a similar situation, right, where it was run by the players, right? It wasn't run by parents, but it was run by the players, and it just goes back to, yeah, you just never know who's telling the truth and what's actually coming out of it, and it's sad to see someone who has a long coaching reputation be ruined by a disgruntled group of
While I was at
parents for 1
Augsburg,
year.
there was an assistant coach that was under investigation based on some allegations that ended up being basically a couple girls that were probably a little bit more disgruntled than anything else. I liked your dad's point about we need to help shift the mindset that playing time is the only metric for success in hockey.
Yeah.
Because on a team, and when you get to college, for some of these girls, that first year is so rough for them because they don't understand the know your role, which
Yep.
I've talked about a lot on this pod already. And I love that you harped on culture earlier, because in the women's game, I think there's so much more emphasis needs to be placed on kind of knowing your role and culture in the locker room. Because I think when women's teams are on crash courses, usually there's a problem in the locker room.
For sure.
And a lot of times that can come from kind of a dynamic among girls, like a jealousy or however that looks. So playing time being a metric measured for success, and of course, hot shit aura, like that can create some serious problems.
Oh yeah, I mean, we're in that stage right now. Now that we've started playing games, I mean, there's people that are unhappy that they're scratched, and that's just the reality of it. And especially coming from, everyone comes from a team where they're their best player, and so they play every game, and they're not used to that reality that when you get to college, right, everybody's their best player from their team. So now you're all competing against each other, and there's a lot of competition, which I think is healthy and it's good in a lot of ways, but they've never really had to embrace that and understand your role and know your role and own it. And it is a very hard thing to do. But I think it's really important. And yeah, kind of going back to what you said, like, it can't all be about playing time, because the reason that people play sports, or the reason why we coach, is to impact them on a different level and impact their lives and, help create a well-rounded individual when they leave this place. And it's not, a lot of it doesn't revolve around playing time. And so it's hard to get players to understand that, because the perspective between coach and player is just so different. But yeah, it's definitely something, we try to do. But if we lose that and it's only about playing time, then what is sports even for, right? Like this is where you learn all the most valuable life lessons. I think everyone who's played sports knows that. You learn them the hard way, and you maybe don't realize it when you're actually playing. Maybe it takes you 2 years after you're done to be like, oh, that actually makes sense. Why that? Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I wonder too for girls, like, I mean, ultimately when you look at an Olympic roster, for example, that would be like the top goal for, U.S. youth girl. And as those coaches are picking the team, I mean, they're looking for feedback from coaches on how does this player handle being a fourth liner, being a bubbler, being somebody that practices hard every day but doesn't get to dress. Those are key factors that coaches want to know to help keep culture, and atmosphere good. So for some of these players, like as they're coming from high school into the next level, that is something that to handle with poise and grace, because that's how you're going to get recognized. And it takes years sometimes to get to the next level where you want to be, if you want to make the, some sort of further hockey team after college.
It's also how you get jobs.
Well,
I mean, if you want to coach down the line, you cannot be a poison in the locker room. It will get around. Hockey's a very small world.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody knows everybody. So if you're a problem in the locker room as a player, when it comes time to hire assistant coaches or directors of recruiting or even video coordinators, it's going to come down to personality and who can get along. You did this job. You were an assistant coach. And at the D3 level, that means did you schedule the hotels and the meals and the bus and everything? You got to be able to do that and be okay with scheduling a bus instead of simply doing press conferences and running the grease board.
Yeah. No, that's very, very true.
WIAC versus MIAC. You played in the WIAC as a player. You're a coach in the MIAC. What's that rivalry like? Is it a rivalry? Do players even think about it as a Wisconsin versus Minnesota thing?
I don't really think like a lot of players do. I think it kind of depends. I mean, when we played Eau Claire last year, it was very personal for me, obviously. I was like, I really want to beat them. But I feel like our players didn't really take that. I think the rivalry between the best teams within the MIAC, like Gustavus versus us, I think the girls take that series much more seriously than they do a WIAC versus MIAC game. But when we played River Falls for our first game of the season, like everybody was very hyped for that. I think it also just comes with the fact that River Falls is number one, right? So playing against good teams, which River Falls, Eau Claire, both good teams that will compete against this year. So I think just trying to create that same type of rivalry almost that you have within the MIAC. But yeah, I don't think they think about it as like a Minnesota-Wisconsin thing, really.
They don't paint their faces with blood going, for Minnesota! Nope, not at all.
In 2004, Stacey Anderson was like an All-American leading scorer for Augsburg, and she transferred to Stevens Point. And that was right at the start of the WIAC's up and rising. And so for a while there actually became like a nice rivalry because a lot of MIAC players, once these WIAC schools created D3 programs that became competitive, were starting to go to these schools. So long ago, that was kind of a fun rivalry.
Yeah.
Like you go 3 hours to play some girl that used to help you win.
Yeah, that's very true.
Sounds like a YHH event in the making, the WIAC-MIAC Challenge.
Well,
we'll buy some ice at Augsburg. We'll run 2 games at the same time, one on each sheet.
No, Augsburg B, those girls would get an advantage because they don't have to skate as far.
Yeah.
Is it smaller?
You didn't notice?
No?
The neutral zone is so small on Rink B.
Dude,
It's
we
so
love when we
weird.
get Augsburg B early in the season because you don't have to be conditioned.
It's good for practice, though. It makes them make quick decisions because
exactly.
you don't have enough space.
Yeah, the neutral zone is tough.
Neutral zone all day. When
It's
we're
like
on
a
Rink B.
glorious 3-on-3 rink. It's like, that's all it is.
Well, I can't think of anything else. We've covered so much over the last however many minutes we've been here. We don't have a clock on the wall, so we don't know.
That's
30?
That's to keep you guys from sweating too much.
Thank you, Kayla. Jossie, do you have anything else for our wonderful guest here?
Well, I'm super excited that you're here. I'm going to see you on Saturday at the Augsburg alumni game. But we're really excited for you at Augsburg, and I've become a big fan of yours over the last half an hour, and really, again, appreciate you being here.
Yeah, thank you guys. It was really fun to be on, so I appreciate you guys inviting me here.
That was a fantastic interview. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, she's
chatting
so
with
much
Biz
fun.
Bauer.
She's like so spunky. I cannot wait to see where that program continues to go.
Yeah, and
with
she's so young. She's just at the beginning of her collegiate coaching career. And if Augsburg keeps putting up results like they have right now, she's on a bit of a rocket ship. We'll see where
She's a
Biz
winner.
ends up.
She's a winner.
On the other end of the spectrum, some disappointing, frustrating, confusing, news out of the D1 level. University of St. Thomas head coach Joel Johnson resigns yesterday. The university put out the world's shortest press release, basically saying that Joel Johnson is out and Bethany Brawson will take over as the interim head coach. Joss, I want to get your thoughts on the two assistant coaches on that bench, Bethany Brawson and Mr. Hockey winner Marty Surdich. Why do you think St. Thomas went with Bethany?
Oh, honestly, maybe because she was a woman. I mean, like, with the ninth hour, when things escalate, bubble over, your coach has resigned, you got to make a move. They named somebody. I don't know what happened behind the closed doors, but when I went to Wisconsin and our coach resigned overnight, they immediately named our assistant coach, the female of the two, the interim head coach. So yeah. I think they need to get somebody in there. They need to provide some stability for the women on the team. And maybe they're picking the one that they have a closer relationship with, or maybe a more interesting dynamic. Who knows? But they need to make moves immediately. Yeah. They can't be in limbo.
Surdich and Brawson, both good coaches and good people. So I don't know if it's really choosing
They'll
one
probably
over the other.
Co-head interim coach. As a matter of fact, one of the when I was at Wisconsin 30 whatever years ago, of the
it wasn't that long ago.
Of the two coaches, so one named interim. The other was not. They basically co-head coached, but he is still on the Wisconsin bench this many years later. So
the ramifications of Joel Johnson resigning will stretch beyond this season. We'll see what happens in the offseason. We'll see what a coach, how wide of a net will St. Thomas cast for a coaching replacement? Will they stay within the borders of Minnesota? Will they look to maybe even Canada? Could they possibly look across the pond
maybe they
at
pull from the men's hockey pool?
Or maybe they find a PWHL assistant.
There's lots to speculate.
Head coach
there is a lot to speculate on. However, we actually have asked Tony to come in and address some of this just because people want answers, and we're in the business of media, but we also want to be respectful and mind our business. So here's Tony to address the situation a little more. If there's anybody in Minnesota who's got a pulse on the hockey world, it's Tony Scott. So we've brought him in to help us out. It's a sombering day in the St. Thomas women's hockey community with the resignation of their head coach, Joel Johnson. Tony, what happened?
Well, no one knows. I know some things that happened, but I will kind of give an account of what happened. So we know, based on looking at the history of St. Thomas women's program's Twitter feed, that as of Thursday, of last week, he was giving press conferences and making quotes, and he was a very active member of the St. Thomas community. Friday, after they lost to Bemidji, Coach Johnson had some words for the players, and it was not taken well by the team. And what we know after that is on Saturday he was put on administrative leave, and an investigation ensued by the athletic department at the University of St. Thomas, and things started to swirl yesterday, on Monday, and then on Tuesday he resigned, and we were the first to report it. And I will say that what happened in the locker room, I have. What would the term be? I have undocumented accounts of what happened in the locker room on Friday. Things that I won't share publicly because I can't get anyone to go on the record to share it. But I do know I have several of the same undocumented accounts of what happened in that locker room that day. But if you want that kind of stuff, you can probably find that from a sensationalized journalist. There's plenty of them, even in the women's hockey world and in the hockey world. You can probably find those in the coming days. Hopefully they don't ever happen, because I think I'm friends with Joel Johnson. I think he's a fantastic hockey coach. He might have had a bad day, or he's had a bad time, or something's going on in his life, and we all make some mistakes. And I hope he's back coaching someday, because he's a credit to the game. I mean, he's an Olympic coach, for crying out loud. And we're not in that kind of business. We don't make money from clicks.
I'm not trying to speculate on what's going on over there. Obviously, it's got to be very unsettling for these players at this point in their season.
Right, and let me just finish. We don't make money on clicks, or we make money on tournaments. We make money on good content, and we don't need to go into that cesspool, and we won't. But I definitely wanted to talk about what happened, and maybe just have a quick discussion about the play. What's most important is what's going to happen there now and what's going on in the player's mind. You were a freshman at Wisconsin, and a coach quit while you were there. What was going on in your head?
Yeah, I was
when that
wondering
happened?
like how common this is. And as a freshman, it's the person that recruits you. It's somebody that you've trusted to take you under their wing. And often there isn't a lot of communication between, administration and team when this happens about what's going on. I remember we would all piled into the back of Sis Paulson and Jen Neary's trucks in black and kind of try to go look outside her house. Like, is she in there? What's she doing? I mean, we were very unsettled. It was a hard pill to swallow to find out that your head coach isn't going to be there, and not knowing the philosophy of the interim coach and feeling almost inferior having an interim. It's an incredibly unsettling time for the players.
Peter, what are your thoughts on this?
I'll be curious to see what happens to some of the players based on discussions. I don't think any of the top players are on their way out.
No,
But
not with that new building coming in and all of the positive energy that's been built. And give some of that credit to Joel Johnson for building that positive energy.
But with any new coaching change, some players are going to get left out in the cold because it'll be a new system, it'll be a new staff. They don't have the recruiting ties that they did with the original staff. We also don't know what the staff is going to look like. St. Thomas might opt to promote from within with Bethany Brawson. She's the interim head coach for right now. I'm assuming Marty Surdich is still on staff at St. Thomas, but we'll see. St. Thomas might opt to go with a full new staff. Two things fix every problem in college athletics. One is a boatload of talent, one is a boatload of money, and St. Thomas has both in spades. So eventually they will be fine. But this is going to be a rocky few days here.
I would call this a big bump in the road for the Tommies, but I think long term the future is still extremely bright. And one of the overarching themes that I have from talking to a lot of people in the last 24 hours on this topic is the girls, the women, are heartbroken.
Yeah, because really we don't speculate. And are the girls, did they uprise? We didn't know. We don't know. And he said heartbroken. And that is just a punch in the gut if you have any empathy.
I was talking to some other parents, St. Thomas parents, and that was the overarching theme, is that the players definitely are hurt because, think about it. A lot of the players on this team, especially the local ones, they were probably hoping for the Wisconsin or the Badger or the Gopher invites, the scholarship. And maybe they were offered scholarships for them. But this is the coach who took a chance on them and loved them. And let me tell you, from talking to a lot of parents of players at St. Thomas, the recruiting by this staff has been, and we've documented it on our website, has been phenomenal. I mean, the way they approach the player, way they've gone after them. So to have that coach actually depart the program mid-career is really hard on them, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond on the hockey rink.
I think recently there was a big either anonymous or some sort of donation to their endowment, and I think they're going to have basically every athlete at that school on a scholarship within the next year.
I wouldn't doubt that whatsoever.
There could be gold at the end of the rainbow in some cases. Like if you look at Wisconsin, we had an interim coach. She had been the assistant. She served the rest of that season, and then they brought in Mark Johnson. So
it turned out pretty good.
I was gonna say, if you're a Tommy or thinking about being a Tommy, just don't discount anything at this point. There's show some strength in adversity here, and see what you guys can do to pull together at such a tough time.
It's a great day to be a coach looking for work in women's hockey.
All right. Thank you to Tony for coming out and just addressing that real quick. We've got a lot of good stuff in our episode, and we are so pumped to be finishing up episode 5 here today. You can find us on YouTube and anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thanks again for checking us out. We'll see you next week on the Women's Hockey Pod.